distinguished participants, members of the private sector, civil society organizations, and my colleagues from the public sector. We are pleased once again to be here this year, TAFCON 2018. We were here last year. I think this has provided a very good platform for public, private sector, as well as civil society dialogue on key issues affecting our country. Because from the onset, I think we will all agree is that to develop this country, we need all hands on deck. It's not just the government. Government plays a facilitating and an enabling role, but the private sector as well as civil society are key if we're going to achieve the development objectives that we have set for ourselves. And I think this is well articulated in the National Development Plan. Where are we in terms of implementation? First, whatever we're going to say here will be preliminary because as part of the National Development Plan, we have made provision for an annual progress report of the National Development Plan, and we intend to embark on that very early in 2019 so that we will do a comprehensive stock-taking exercise as to the implementation of the National Development Plan, what has worked, what the challenges are, and how do we need to work together as a country, including all of us, to at least address those challenges. By way of background, we know that the National Development Plan was launched in February 2018. When we were here the last time, then we were just finalizing the formulation. Following its launching, we felt it is very important, since it will require resources, to do something to mobilize resources for its implementation. But as part of the formulation process, we know we tried as much as possible to make this as consultative as possible. For the first time in the history of the Gambia, especially for some of us who are relatively young, we had consultations across the length and breadth of this country, in each and every district and in the wards in the greater Banjul area. We had series of technical as well as policy level consultations. Thematic working groups were set up around so many issues, including education, energy, macroeconomic management, and a host of others. There were consultations with the civil society organizations, the private sector, as well as our development partners, both resident and non-resident. This led to the finalization of the National Development Plan and its subsequent launching. And we don't have to go into the details as to what the vision of the National Development Plan is, because most of us have already extensively read or gone through this National Development Plan. But by way of goal, we are committing ourselves to delivering good governance and accountability, social cohesion, and national reconciliation, and a revitalized and transformed economy for the well-being of all Gambians. So it is really a very big task that we are setting ourselves. And if I say ourselves again, I want to emphasize that this goes beyond government alone. It's all of us, because we can't develop this country with government alone. Government has to make sure that it effectively partners and creates that space for the private sector and civil society to participate. When we costed the National Development Plan, the overall cost stood at around $2.4 billion. When we did the assessment of resources that are already available, both local as well as ongoing projects, we had a financing gap of $1.6 billion. We developed a financing strategy, because again, we say government alone cannot finance this. We have to work with development partners. We have to work with the private sector as well as civil society organizations. And we came up with about 42 flagship projects, ranging from governance, going to infrastructure, energy, issues relating to youth, women, agriculture, fisheries, and a host of other areas. And these were the flagship projects that were presented at an international conference in Brussels that was held in May. But as built up to the international conference, we felt at the international conference it's mainly institutions, development partners coming and pledging the amount of resources they want to make available, both financial as well as both financial and technical, So you have to make sure that you do a lot of groundwork before then to make sure that they are adequately sensitized about the contents of the National Development Plan. And as such, government embarked on series of advocacy meetings with our partners. We know that many of our partners are not necessarily resident in the Gambia. Most of them are resident in Dakar, but covering the Gambia. So the first port of call, I think barely a week after the launching of the National Development Plan, was in Dakar to meet some of these partners. Also had tours of some European capitals, including the EU headquarters in Brussels, to have one-on-one with different countries, but also have very good discussions with the decision-making bodies of the EU. We also reached out to some of our partners in North America, including the Bretton Woods Institution, but also most importantly, the United Nations at its headquarters, where the Minister of Finance presented the National Development Plan to the United Nations, including the Peace Building and Support Operations Office. The objectives, like I said, was to adequately sensitize our partners ahead of the international conference so that they will be able to know what the thrust of the National Development Plan is and what the resource requirements are and the various priority areas and the flagships ahead of the international conference. On May 22nd and 23rd, the international conference for the Gambia was held in Brussels with the support of several partners, including the EU, but we also work very closely with the UNCT, that's the United Nations country team in the country, as well as with some partners like the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank. 2 days. The first day was the pledging session. That was the international conference itself. And the second day was devoted to a private sector forum so that we'll be able to discuss investment opportunities in the Gambia for the private sector, but also within the context of the National Development Plan. And again, in terms of the international conference, it was made as inclusive as possible. So we had representatives from the private sector, and the president participated on behalf of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We had several heads of private sector organizations who also participated. We also had civil society present at the international conference. Luckily, the international conference was able to mobilize significant amount of resources in the form of pledges, about $1.7 billion. And again, we always want to emphasize these are pledges. That means a lot of work needs to be done to make sure that these pledges materialize into commitment. And that has been the thrust of the Ministry of Finance and the government as a whole to make sure that we try as much as possible to get these pledges materialized into commitments. Before I come to how far we have gone as far as these resources are concerned, it will be important that we look at what we also reach out to stakeholders in country, both at the regional level as well as at the national level, to share the contents of the National Development Plan. Following the international conference, we have stepped up the follow-ups with some of our partners, and bulk of the resources on the bilateral front are mainly grants. That's about $75.53 million. And as we speak, about 92% of this are committed in various areas as far as the National Development Plan is concerned. We also have the multilateral pledges, which are a combination of grants as well as loans. There's about $1.5 billion. And as we speak, significant amount of these resources, about 50% has also been pledged to various intervention areas. So as we speak, several interventions are already underway in the area of governance. We are seeing the Constitutional Review Commission starting its work. We are seeing the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission also starting to do its work. In the area of energy, we're seeing the Electricity Restoration and Modernization Project taking off the ground, and we're seeing significant investments in the area of technical vocational education and training, as well as youth empowerment. And we've already started finalizing projects in the area of agriculture, which are underway. In terms of some of the challenges, that we really need to work on and enhance is the issue of multi-stakeholder involvement in the implementation. And recently we have established a multi-stakeholder platform that includes private sector as well as civil society to also enhance communication of the National Development Plan and its implementation, and to continuously build capacity. And as we speak, we have undertaken several capacity building initiatives around project planning, results-based management, and also a comprehensive review of the monitoring and evaluation framework with a view to making sure that we position ourselves to embark on the comprehensive annual progress report for 2018, which will be done in the first quarter of 2019.
Thank you. Thank you so much.